All right, well, let me go ahead and first of all just welcome everyone to the channel today. And I just want to say that I am honored and so happy to have Nanci Trivellato as our guest. Nanci is really a person that I consider one of the worldwide experts on consciousness and research about consciousness. And today we're going to talk about consciousness and we're going to talk about how it relates, especially to out of body experiences. And Nanci, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Now, we're going to get, I'm sure everyone starts interviews with you by asking you what consciousness is and a definition and all of that. And that's a great way to start. But I'm going to start a little bit different way. And I'm going to just ask you, if you would please, to relay a little bit of a story about when you were just a child and you had no knowledge that an uncle of yours was going into the hospital for some surgery, but yet you found out about that in a very unique way. Could you just give us a quick rundown of that?
Yes. Well, I was born in a very small city in Brazil, and basically we were not so well to do. We did not have a television set at home. We didn't have libraries in the city. It was really small city. I was about 7 years old, more or less. I have never seen anybody really ill at that age. And what happened is that I would sometimes leave the body. And frequently, I would feel like vibrations when I was leaving the body. Not every time. I did not know I was leaving the body. Let me say that. I would just have that experience. And I would feel those vibrations that seemed to me like an earthquake, but we do not have earthquake in that region. I never even thought of that. But I would see my body lying in bed when I would have those experiences. And that would be very confusing to me as a child because they were so lucid, so vivid, that there was no doubt in my mind that I was awake. I was not sleeping, I was not dreaming, and I would see my body lying in bed, and I would look around and see my sister's bed, and I would think, what's going on? How can I be at the same time asleep and awake? In one of those instances, something interesting happened that made me then later on in my life very intrigued to research out of body experience and the effects that it can have in our lives. Because in one of these instances, I went out of my body, and there was a very, very dear uncle of mine that had left to São Paulo City, which has absolutely nothing to do with the place I was born. My city was the size of a city in which everybody knows everybody. And they would play some music on the church so you would hear and know what's going on. So that was our means of communication. And São Paulo City, of course, it's huge. And I saw the city when my uncle was there. I did not know he was ill. I just knew he was going to São Paulo. I thought to visit relatives or something like that. I mean, I didn't even bother. And I end up seeing all of that intricate layers and layers of roads in São Paulo, those tall buildings that I had never seen before. And I ended up in a hospital. And in the hospital, I saw him lying in bed.
Hmm.
I saw him with equipment. He was breathing with help of extra oxygen in his nostrils, and of course, receiving some medicine and sorrows in his veins. And all of that for me was like I was awake and I was thinking, what is going on? Why am I in this place? What is he doing here? And at some point, I saw like a transparent tube coming out of his abdomen from under the sheet, the white sheet that was covering him. And a reddish liquid would drop in a glass jar or something like that that was on the floor. And I just left it. But mm, when they came back from São Paulo, then I asked my aunt, why was he in that place that I had, and told her I had seen him while I was sleeping. And she was very shocked because we were not super religious, but we were Catholics.
Mm. Yeah.
We did not know anything about any of these subjects.
Right.
So she was shocked. She did not know what to say. And I heard later on she telling my mother, how was it possible that I had actually seen him? And only later on, I came to understand that he had had a bladder surgery.
Mm.
So that's why he was having that catheter so that he wouldn't have to go to urinate. And everything made a lot of sense to me, let's say,
Right.
20 years later.
Right.
And I started thinking, how is it possible that one can witness an event that I know I could not imagine?
Hmm.
I am always preferred to go to the skeptical side of things
Yes.
because I believe when we are not certain, it's better to
Right.
research more, analyze more, think more, and verify more than jump to conclusions that are not correct.
Right.
So even though I was so interested in what exists in the world, what we are here for, and what do we have to do, those questions were always inside of me since I was a young child. But that event made me think that these phenomena deserve to be studied. And I dedicated a lot of research and time to study the out of body experience. And one comment I would like to make is that the out of body experience is a tool, it's not an end. There is no point in leaving the body and just visiting a relative. You visit a relative with your body here in the physical world.
Right.
But it's very relevant when we can leave the body and learn about how things work in the
Yes.
spirit dimension. Because we are here and we keep wondering, uh, what is going to
Exactly.
be of me after I pass? All of us, we know we are going to leave this dimension one day. And
Right.
it keeps intriguing us, and we want to know what exists beyond. And the out of body experience really changed one paradigm, one's way of thinking about life. It does not remove life's challenge. They are still there, but
Yeah,
it helps a lot, I guess, to understand all of this.
for sure. And you actually had a very successful traditional career, academic career, and career out in the business world. I mean, you got your undergraduate degree in both languages and literature. Later, you got a master's degree in the United Kingdom in
Yeah.
methods of
Psychology.
psychology research.
Mhm, mhm.
You worked for IBM, you worked for Singer, you started international, well, we'll talk about those organizations later. But my point is that even though you had this desire, you had this feeling that there was more to consciousness because of your experiences. It wasn't something that stopped you from living a traditional life until you made that conscious decision that you wanted to follow that as your primary goal. Is that correct?
That is correct. And I think we live in a world that forces us sometimes to take sides when no sides should be taken. Because I always say life is multidimensional. I don't think it's logical for somebody to say, oh, I like to study spiritual affairs and to have a spiritual experience and go for my moment of meditation. Every moment of life, we are in contact with something that our physical senses cannot pick completely, but it picks something. And we are interacting with this non physical reality. I think what the out of body experience gives us is some sort of almost like a ratification
Hmm.
that, yes, this exists. You are not a physical body only, even though we are here with the physical body. So for me, all of this is so natural, and I see that this is a potential that everyone intrinsically have, but not everyone wishes to pursue that.
Right.
And in my experience, that most people get further from studying these topics because they are afraid. It's fear.
Yeah.
It's not only fear of the experience, it's fear of a paradigm shift
Yes.
because they think, and we are kind of forced to believe that by the way the academic world is and society in general, that if they just research, observe, or give themselves a chance to sense something that's not physical, then they become stupid. They are going to become gurus or fanatical, or they are going into a maybe a cult.
Yes.
Those things exist. Some people are extremists and they are fanatical. But let's not label spiritual studies with that same wording because it's not correct.
That's
Once I gave
that's
a yes,
so
please.
important. And I have to tell you that coming from a traditional Catholic background myself, I had interest in this subject also at an early age, but it wasn't something that I could ever discuss with my parents because exactly of that fear. And and they would automatically associate that with something that was unholy, that
Yeah,
type of a thing. So and I'm so interested in getting your analysis of my own partial out of body experience a little bit later. But let's just talk a little bit about what consciousness is, if you don't mind. And I know that. It seems difficult, I'm sure, for people who have never really thought about the subject to think of consciousness in a more of a remote location, away from what we consider our physical bodies. But when you think about it, not only, in my opinion, is it very possible, but I think it's something that's really very natural. Could you just talk a little bit about what consciousness is a little bit, Nanci?
of course. It seems there are so many definitions, and
Yeah.
I have been in conferences with many prominent scientists that the whole point is to discuss what consciousness is. And each person will have their own opinion, their own perspective. And the truth is that no one really knows.
Yeah.
But what we know and where do I stand and what I see as consciousness in my studies, we are intelligent beings. We are aware. We know we exist. We can think, we can feel, we can deal with our emotions, sometimes in a very good way, sometimes not. We can evolve. We can evolve in a way that problems that maybe would hurt us 10 years ago, now for us, it's indifferent. We evolve in ways that we can learn to understand the dance of life and handle better everything. But if we can evolve, and I'll put some another argument there. There are so many studies of people who remembered past lives. Lots of crazy stories, but lots of stories that were confirmed. Very serious studies. And if we see that there are people who remember their past lives and it can be confirmed, if we put together an experience like the one I had, which I had no way of imagining, and that's what for me is the most important thing. If we put together all of that, and so many cases in which we sense a reality that is beyond, like premonition. Some people, they have premonitions of a situation that is going to happen that is precise. So there is something inside of us that is alive, aware, self aware, that evolves, and that something is not in the body, is not material. Of course, we manifest it here through the brain, and whatever we have stored in our brains in terms of information and cultural background will interfere because the brain is the interface through which consciousness or us as a being that I'm calling now consciousness manifest here. So this state of being conscious is not exactly what consciousness is, according to my view, because consciousness is an element that is not matter, is not material, and it's not energy. It's beyond matter and
Yes.
energy. But consciousness manifests through energy and therefore matter, because matter and energy are two sides of the same coin.
Right.
And we have to understand consciousness. In my view, we must understand energy. And
Yes.
I'm not talking only about physical energy, electrical energy, chemical energy, or kinetic energy. I'm talking about subtle energy, spiritual energies, energy from our energy body, from our auras. People sense this a lot. It affects our lives all the time, but it's so little studied.
Yeah.
There are many cases that have been confirmed of people sensing energies and for example, being healed. Those are the cases that are more well registered, I would say. But those who are watching us now, they may remember moments in which they looked at something and had a feeling that had nothing to do with the visual appearance of that object or person they were seeing. And later on, they get to understand that feeling was actually precise in terms of what they were picking from the history of that object. And energy store information. Therefore, us as consciousness, we go from one location to another. If we have an out of body experience, and you and I meet, Ted, it's pretty much the two of us chatting as we are chatting here, and I hope that happens. It will be a nice experience. So it shows that whatever we are, and we are just using consciousness as a word to define that, we could use self or being or whatever. Um, but whatever we are, we can manifest beyond. We can jump from one life to another when we change bodies.
Right.
And what is the purpose of all of that? It's
Yeah.
very hard to say, as it's a certainty, because this here, I'm not talking religion, I'm not talking about jumping into beliefs. But
Right.
if we bring a theory that seems to make sense, it looks like there is a connection between events of one life into another.
Yes.
Because we remember past lives. Sometimes, some people, not everybody, but sometimes we remember. Sometimes we have out of body experience that we see things that confirm some of the perceptions and things that we, in our minds, knew they were related to a past life, although this is not so common experience. And out of body experience is a great tool to study all that and to remove what would be just superstition, just beliefs. Because there in this area, there are too many beliefs. And
Yeah.
people who want to leave the body, if you allow me a parenthesis, they just want a technique. Give me a technique that takes me out of the body because they want a technique and they want to explore and
Yeah.
they are curious and they want to enjoy. But one technique alone may not be enough. For some people, yes, they apply one technique, they leave the body, and they have a great experience that teach them a lot. Most of the time, no.
Mhm.
People try many techniques, and they take a long time to leave the body. Once they are all out, they do not know how to interpret what they are experiencing because it is a serious study.
Yes.
Some people they take it as it's just an experience, and some people even use psychedelics. But I believe that that's natural. We can have great experience. We should have all our mental functions
Yes.
perfectly so that we can analyze and learn from it.
And what's important for people to know here is that when we're talking about an out of body experience, a shift of consciousness, we're not talking about a lucid dream, which a lot of people kind of start thinking, associate with, this a similarity of an out of body experience. It's not a lucid dream. And if it's ever happened to you, and it's only happened to me once, and again, we're going to get into this a little bit, but what Nanci was talking about there with the energy, there's a vibrational state that many people feel with the onset of a true out of body experience. And I felt that for the only time in my whole life. It was very, very pleasant for me. My whole experience only lasted 8 to 10 seconds because I wasn't able to get all the way out. I just kind of started coming up, and then at my midsection, I couldn't get out. And I had done a lot of study about out of body experiences, OBEs. So I wasn't frightened. As a matter of fact, I had about 6 months earlier, I had put a lot of time into trying to master a technique, never got anywhere near being close. This just happened out of the blue for me. But the truth is that I was shocked when well, the way I came out of my body wasn't in a way that I would have ever dreamed. It wasn't the way that I had necessarily imagined when I read the books. I didn't come all the way out the way I had imagined. I came out from the head up just like that. I wouldn't have imagined that, which was another way that told me it was true. And not only that, but my consciousness was out of my body. I know this is difficult for people to believe if you've never experienced this, but I was actually shocked when I went back in. I was shocked when I woke up because I already felt that I was conscious totally, not the way I'd ever felt in any dream, not the way in any lucid dream, or even how I would have imagined it from studying the techniques. And you make the point, Nanci, so well that sometimes when people think about when they hear about this and they might practice it, sometimes it does them more harm than good, right? I mean, because it's not really what you necessarily expect all the time. Is that right?
That's right, because I think instead of clarifying and giving people certainty of what's going on and assuring them of what are the points that they have to be cautious about and what are the points that it's natural, it's going to happen no matter if you want or not. So you might just observe and learn from it. Instead of that, they bring formulas that are meant to make it easy or as if everybody would have the same type of experience. And we are very individual beings. It's like somebody undergoing therapy or like someone who had a trauma from their childhood. They will deal with that in different ways. It will take different times. Now, I am associating these or making now an analogy with some trauma from childhood, but the out of body experience has nothing to do with that. I only mean to say the path is different for each person. But most out of body experience, according to my research, maybe 85% of out of body experience plus are spontaneous, like you described.
Hmm.
But I'm certain, Ted, that the time that you have dedicated to try and live the body consciously contributed to the experience you had,
Hmm.
made it possible. So that is very important to acknowledge. Because in a way, we have to prepare ourselves. But everybody dreams. So no one will doubt dreams exist. Maybe a person here or there, but because they are not well informed. But less people remember their dreams than those who dream. So there are many people who dream and don't remember their dreams. Even a lesser number of people or fewer people would have lucid dreams. It's more rare. And then having a lucid dream and remembering,
Hmm.
it's even more rare. Having an out of body experience is completely different. And it's the rarest of all. But actually, sometimes the out of body experience happens and one does not remember. And maybe some of those who are watching us now will see moments in which they go to a place or they are experiencing something in life. And when it's happening, they remember they had seen that during the night
Right.
because that was an out of body experience. In my example, could have been other phenomena, but I'm placing that sometimes it is an out of body experience, but they never remembered. They only
Right.
remember when they see the actual situation happening in front of them, and the whole like story unraveling there. And if we think of that, so it's very easy for people to accept dreams. And in my experience, when I am talking to someone in a one-on-one session or even teaching a class, I see that many people describe experiences that they consider to be lucid dreams. And when I hear the details of the description, I say, no, this is an out-of-body experience. All the elements are there, and vice versa. But if we would hear you and I, Ted, say, well, we had a lucid dream, and in our lucid dream, we felt as if we were outside the body. That's much more acceptable, much easier for people to hear, much easier for people to feel like they are safe trying that. They feel more curious. They feel that's more within their reach. Why? Because it's challenged less.
Mm.
Our mind frame, what we believe life is, because when we wake up in the morning, and first thing we see in the mirror is ourselves,
Right,
right?
right.
And we have to deal with our physical body the whole time.
Yeah,
Maybe a few moments that we are just sleeping and we leave the body, the physical body will be left aside. Because of that, it's so much easier for people to accept. But I want to state here that many more people have out of body experiences than we would imagine.
yeah,
According to the statistics, mm, and these are based on research that had been done like
sure.
3 decades ago, so they are not so up to date. But it's like between 1 to 2% of the population have conscious,
Yes,
recalled,
yes,
out of body experiences
right,
in which they feel getting out and everything. But some out of body experiences, we don't sense going out, we sense only when we are out there.
right.
Some out of body experiences produce the vibrations that you described, that I call vibrational state, but
Yes,
some they don't. You
right,
may leave the body without the vibrations.
right,
So each experience is different. And when one does not know what's going on, that person can even become afraid of the vibrations per se, because
right.
that is out of the ordinary, right?
And the vibrations for me, and again, it was the only time I ever had them in my whole life, but they lasted that whole day in the sense of not the vibrational state, but I felt light. I felt like I was walking on air. I felt like I was at a different resonance, if you will, than I'd ever remembered being at. And I found it absolutely fantastic, actually. And the other thing is that, well, people, many, people around the world have beliefs, of course, of an afterlife, and we think of our spirits then going to heaven or wherever, our thoughts are. So how much, when you really think about those terms, if we believe that, then why is it so difficult for us to believe that we might also have some of those abilities to have a higher consciousness or a shifting consciousness that may enable us to have as humans such better insight and more awareness of the world around us, which is really interesting. All right, here's a question I have to ask you as a journalist. Okay, um, have you been able to verify being out of body? In other words, have you had instances where you've seen something that, and I know you did the story of your uncle, of course, but other experiences where you've been able to say, I saw something in a room or I saw something and then I didn't know it was there, and then later I happened to be able to verify it. Has that happened to you?
I had a few of them, yes, different situations, things that I saw outside the body, and I would see something about to happen, and I would return to the body, and immediately that would happen. I've had several of those experiences, or somebody that I don't see for a long time, and I would meet outside the body, but somebody important to me that I was connected with. So they would tell me something that is concerning them and a situation of life that I didn't have a clue what's going on. And then a few days later, I found out that that was exactly the way the person told me.
Wow.
Some people, I do not know, they would call it intuition. They just phrase it differently.
Right.
But I was with that person in the middle of the night. We were actually talking. The big question is, did that other person remember?
Right.
If they remembered, what did they made of it? Maybe they just thought, oh, I dreamed of Nancy, and only Nancy knows that they told me a secret that
Right.
nobody knew. Maybe that's how they interpreted. And that's how most people interpret. I was once in an interview it was in Cyprus, and to a community that they are Orthodox Catholics. So it's a different strictness than what we would experience. And people would ask questions while I was live on TV. And some people would tell stories of things that happened to them. So amazing. Things that they saw and things even materializing, like a spirit or some sort of energy becoming material. People are afraid of that, but that sometimes happens. It's rare, but happens. And there are many studies about that. But those people would tell those stories. And I say, wow, that's incredible. I wish I could be taking note. And then at the end, they say this was a messenger of God that appeared here.
Right.
So the interpretation is the problem. Now, Ted, sometimes some of us, and I want to say this because I know people from many different backgrounds will watch this, but some of us, we may interpret experiences in ways that it's completely different from the norm.
Right.
Let's say somebody is 8 years old or 6 or 10, and they go to church with their parents. And when they are sitting there, they say, this is not the correct answer to this question. This is not the way it happens. I don't think it makes sense in this way. It would
Mhm.
make more sense in that way. So some of us, we have had experiences enough in some moment of our multi-existential
Yeah.
history that in this lifetime, it's natural. It's natural to assume that death is not the end.
Mhm.
It's natural to assume that there are other beings that we cannot see. As a matter of fact, many people sense them, but they just discard it.
Right.
Many children, many have experiences in which they perceive presences around them. I do not know if you are aware of, but I have made a very deep research about experiences during childhood. Um, and I interviewed people from like 14 different countries, many backgrounds, and I interviewed some kids, like as young as 2.5. So therefore, I was with the mother, trying to talk with the kid and doing whatever was possible to communicate, but I could gain information from that. And one of the things that is very remarkable is that many times people would not remember the experience they have had later on in their lives. They say, oh, I never had an out of body experience. And I would start asking, but have you ever had this and this and this and this? So then the experience is there, but it's a matter of connecting.
Yeah. Yeah. And um, you do a great job of pointing out. I mean, there has been research done. Robert Crookall in the 60s did research, interviewed over 300 people that, that had experiences. Charles Tart, of course, had the famous Miss Z experiments. For people that don't know what that is, he had a subject that he had put five numbers up at random above where she slept. Now, there was some question maybe after about the methodology of how he went about the experiment, but the fact was that on the fourth night, this subject actually was able to reveal in the correct order the five digits that was there. Now, I and to a lot of us, especially when you first start out, it's like, oh, that could be confirmation, and that's cool, that's great, and everything. But what you've said, Nancy, and what I came to understand is it's really a higher purpose when you're leaving your body, to me, it's not so you can go in the next room or you can visit someone or it's the purpose of your existence, I mean, you're improving, there's some reason that you are having that experience. At least that's the way it seems to me. So the idea of confirmation isn't as important to me as it used to be because um, if you have one of these experiences, you will believe. I'm telling you, it's amazing. And the other thing that you've brought out, Nancy, that has really helped me is that you made the point, I know in your work, that you know we sometimes we can experience consciousness in different ways in the sense of you use the example of taking a picture. If you take a picture of a landscape using regular photography, you see it one way. If you take an infrared photo of it, it's a different way, or an ultraviolet, and I think that has a lot to do with our experiences too. Could you comment on that?
Yes, because we tend to think everybody's seeing the world in the same way, and that is completely wrong. The perception we have of temperature is different from one person to another. How well we see in our perception of color is different from one person to another. Actually, there is even a cultural study that some tribes in Africa, they, for example, only have three colors. Everything for them is three colors. And once you can only verbalize that and you can only encounter some references and framework to deal with the world you are seeing based in three colors, they can only think within that spectrum of reality. So, how can we open our eyes, literally in a way, to the reality that is really here? Not only to what our eyes can pick, because the truth is, we are not seeing the world as it is. There are some microorganisms that we don't see. We cannot even explain exactly our biology because we have so much space in our cells that it's kind of with nothing, and maybe there is something that we still cannot observe. And when we talk about subtle energy, I'm going to put spiritual energy just to pick something, but it's an energy that is not physical world, but it's here. So where does that come from? How does that connect with our experiences? And according to my studies, everything falls into that energetic phenomenon because these phenomena they will penetrate many other experiences. So if somebody has a premonition, it is related with energy. If you do a healing, it's related with energy. And if you see someone and you have an intuition, energy is participating. But even more, if you are able to leave the body, energy is participating. Why? Because the same energy we are talking about that every human being has, and every human being can be aware of it, but not necessarily sense it,
Yes.
because sensing, people expect to sense in the way they sense a physical thing. But
Yes.
that is operating in our mind, and that's why intuition happens. It's almost like, oh, it popped in my mind. So that's an intuition. Maybe it popped in your mind because you picked that information, but your brain cannot register the exact information that you picked. So you transfer or you translate that into it's just maybe an intuition. And that is so common that I think one of the things that we have to do to understand all of this is to study more about this energy
Mm.
because we leave the body. I was commenting that and I interrupted because of this exact energy that people call aura. That is not exactly how people discuss about it, but let's leave it our aura. Our aura is binding our physical and non-physical body. And the more of certain characteristics we have in our energy body and our aura, more sensitive a person will be. There are people that they cannot be, for example, in a crowded place that they feel awful. There are people, they cannot stand, for example, certain interactions because it's like it's piercing them. They sense that actually in their sentiments and their almost physical body, there's something going on there. And what do they have to think? Oh, maybe I have a psychiatric problem. Maybe, and some do, but it cannot be so straightforward. Or maybe I was abused and that's why this is happening. People jump to conclusion. They don't stop to see all of the different factors that may be present in a given situation that would point to them what would have justified that occurrence in the first place. And it's so amazing. I have had cases that I've seen of people who were like having a specific pain or discomfort in their bodies for decades. And of course, they would do exams and nothing would show. They had nothing. And sometimes doctors start trying to look for things that are not there because the patient is complaining and comes back again and saying that thing is going on. So either you tell your patient you are crazy and this is not there, or you
Right.
have to start looking for other explanations. And many times doctors would do that. But later on, you see that there was, and in some cases, no matter how much they look for, they find nothing that would justify some of the sensations the person had or the person has. And therefore, it would show it is energetic. And in some cases of some people, I have been able to work with them and teach them how to observe what is physical, what is emotional, what is fantasy. We may imagine something is happening, and what is energetic. We
Hmm.
need to separate all of that without leaving space for just creating information that is not there. And this is
Yeah.
not easy because the brain is all the time trying to pick information where there's none. That's why we look at the clouds and we see shapes
Right.
there.
Right.
That is natural. But can one be trained to sense all of this without or being sure that they are not just creating it? Yes.
And you've done a lot of work in the velo technique that you have kind of pioneered and really mastered. And that is, well, you explained it. That's a way to kind of raise vibrational energy. Am I correct there?
Yes, you are correct. So the Velo technique is one technique that I have developed because I have been perfecting that for myself, and then I tested that in thousands of people. I think was 1,300, something like that, in longitudinal studies throughout 1 year, each of them, to observe the effect. So it's a very serious study. But this Velo technique will actually adjust the energy body. Because if someone needs to know something about the physical body, you can go into an X-ray machine and function MRI. You can do so many different tests that you can know what's going on with the body. But when we are talking about the energy body, we are totally in the dark. We would only have our sensations, our feeling that is almost like an intuition of what's going on, and then we doubt it, and better doubt than believe the wrong thing, but sometimes the perception is clearly there and it is there. And because of it, we do not have means to analyze what's going on in the energy body. And sometimes people have sensations that are actually happening in the energy body and that will interfere with their lives. But there is something else that I want to add. It's not so much what people would like to hear, but that is the fact that I have been observing for decades and that I have experienced before these decades that I have been studying it. That is sometimes energy gravitating in an environment or entities, different beings gravitating around would interact with our energy and cause us to have certain thoughts that are not ours, feelings that are not ours. So
Yeah.
some people will feel, for example, enraged for no reason at all in the middle of the day. And they say, oh, this keeps repeating. And how do they try to handle it? By thinking, okay, this doesn't make sense. Okay, I'm going to pay attention to what I say so they don't just blew a situation out of
Right.
proportion because they felt enraged. They never stop to think, could it be because I am picking energies and I am sensitive to those energies. So I have actually something good. Most people are oblivious to that reality, but I am aware of it. I am picking it. But it's causing me to react in resonance with that. And
Mm.
this happens a lot. So now going back to the Velo technique that I made here, a big parenthesis to explain why, what is the importance of this technique. Because with Velo, one would work or actually almost like adjust their whole energy body at once. So if we think about the energy centers in our body or chakras, there are many studies about them. It's not exactly as people would talk about like the Hindu studies, because that is very limited. I'm just trying to bring a word here to say there are further studies.
Right.
It's not only those traditional knowledge that existed. But if someone is more sensitive or has some type of adjustment needed in the energy body, you do not have a doctor to look for. If you look for a healer, it may work, it may not work, it may get worse. It may be a good healer that actually picks up what's going on and can give you important tips on the root of that problem and how to handle it. Or maybe someone who just tells you whatever is the easiest because they don't know. And very often we don't know.
Mm.
So we need to find ways to know this, I know what's going on. This, I
Yeah.
don't know. That is okay. We
Right.
do not have to know everything. But what we know, we know. So you imagine that somebody's having sensations, is having nightmares, is having impulses, or is feeling like the person wakes up every morning feeling drained or with a negative feeling inside of themselves. And that, in my example, is not because of an actual situation, but rather something that gravitates.
Mm.
The best method that I know to handle this sort of thing and all of the effects and consequences that it would have is Velo. Because no matter what part, so let's say this is our astral body, right? And the energy body here revolving around. So no matter in which part of our astral body or energy body the problem is, if we are doing Velo, we are tackling that. Why? Because Velo works with the whole body at once. That is the importance of Velo.
Mm.
So it's a very simple exercise in which energy moves inside one's body, similar to some of the procedures that exist, like Vipassana. There is some similarities, but it's not identical because what I created in my method was like a better strategy to make sure the energy is going to the points that it needs to go. Because concentrating in one's energy and make it move up and down, that is very easy. But making it move in a way that all cells of the body, in other words, every chakra, the hundreds of them, or how many exist there that we do not know for sure,
Mhm.
all of them are being bathed in that energy, that is more difficult.
Mm.
So there are ways of doing it, but basically the technique is making the energy flow,
Right.
your own energy. So it's important people know that. So I'm going to give a little basis here.
Mhm.
We have energy inside of us in each cell and a little bit around. Around doesn't matter. What exists around is a result of what is inside. And energy that we have inside of us will be impregnated with a lot of information, not only from the events we are conscious of, but from subconscious events, also impregnated with information of the non-physical spiritual reality around, with information of things we have experienced in previous lives. And all of that is in a way like stored in our energy body and in our chakras. Because of it, when we start moving our energies and we are going to create this flow of the energy inside of us, and that's why the energy that is inside is the most important. You control your energy. You may not sense your energy. Sensing is a step further, but you control your energy. If you can, concentrate, really apply your will. Most people do not know what will is. You'd better study if it's not clear in your mind. And you must have a decision. I'm going to do this, but just saying you're going to do it is not enough. You have to actually do it. And there's where the will comes. And you have to concentrate. And then it doesn't matter what happens, you start moving your energy inside of your body through all of your cells in a straight line according to the position of your body. So it's almost as if it would be moving inside our bones. If we move inside our bones, no matter the position we are, it is straight in reference to the body position. So going from the top of the head to the sole of the feet and coming back. And not coming out. Energy should not go out. It's your energy inside of your body. You training your power to be in control of what is the most important thing to you in this lifetime. Because how you react to things, your strength of presence, your capacity to maintain motivation, what you attract to yourself, everything is related to this energy. The big trick here is how can we be conscious of it and adjust it? Because if we have unconscious information stored there, let's say from a previous life, not necessarily need to know 100% of that, but we need to shed some light to that so that while we work with this energy, this starts like dissipating. And in my experience, this technique was wonderful for me, and I is the one I apply the most. To this date, if something feels strange or I am in a place that feels strange, that's what I use. If I am outside the body and I need to be certain of what's going on and I need to expand my lucidity and my control, that's what I use because that is very natural. There's nothing that is related with imagination, spooky stuff, strange techniques, ritualistic. No, it's just you in control of what you have inside your body, your own energy. And when people start doing that, and that has been my experience, the results will vary from people to people,
Mhm.
depending on where their funnel is, their threshold, their weak spot, in a way, in terms of them as individuals, not in the physical body only. Most of the time, people can reduce a lot certain manifestations of diseases. This has been confirmed, studied, cases studied. They become more lucid of what is going on in the spirit world around
Right,
them, but less vulnerable.
right,
Let us understand what I'm saying. Being lucid does not mean being vulnerable.
right,
And just because one person does not know what's going on in terms of energy in the spirit world and all of the non-physical reality around it does not mean they are safe. Just mean they don't have a clue of what's going on. So they say what your eyes can't see, you won't feel, or there's a saying, something
yeah,
like this. But that's not true because your eyes don't see, but that affects you,
right,
that affect the quality of your sleep, the quality of your thoughts, therefore, your relationships, therefore, what you build in this life, and how you are going to feel about your life when time comes for you to say, okay, I'm going to a new adventure.
right.
So that is very important, I think, to bring light to.
And um, one point that when I read Robert Monroe's books, years and years ago, one of the points that he made that I thought was very salient was he said that as he was sick and he felt like he was close to death, he felt it was much easier to have out of body experiences, and he supposedly experienced them very naturally. And that makes sense to me that the closer we would get to finishing this earth life, that our vibrations probably would be automatically increased, and we would be much more adept to recognizing what's not in our earth plane here. Does that also make some sense?
It does. Sorry.
Bless
It does make sense, but it's not always like that.
you.
There
Okay.
are some people that they have had OBEs, but later in their life, they find it more difficult,
Hmm.
especially if they are not as lucid as they were when young.
All right, right,
Because there are so many variables. That is the challenge with the out of body experience. There are so many variables that interfere and influence that one technique is not enough. We need to know the variables.
right,
Most of the people, they find it easier to leave the body when they are younger because there is less of preoccupation about life.
right, right.
We are just living the problems of the day.
Yeah,
Throughout adulthood, we have to pay the bills, we have to take care of the house, we have to deal with complex relationships, and later in life, all of this settles down. And what I see is more critical in this case is the psychological aspect of things. But in the case of Robert Monroe, that would make sense
mhm,
because he had so many spontaneous experience. And with time, he started learning how to control the vibrations
right,
and how to control the way he would get out of the body. So I suppose he perfected the techniques. And he brought many interesting ideas about how to sense energy. He would be so genuine in his book and just describe his experience, but that has helped so many people. So I think that may be the case of some people. One thing that I would like to add is that anybody can learn to have an out of body experience. It's just a bunch of variables you have to take care of.
right.
But if someone has, for example, almost like a conditioning, that they think that is so big of a sin that every time this is happening unconsciously they hold themselves inside the body, that person can learn, but it's going to be harder.
Right, right, right.
And so we have to take these factors into consideration, but it is not difficult to leave the body. And that's why it happens spontaneously so much.
Just a kind of technical question. Some people have reported that there is a silver thread that is connected once you leave the body. What's your observations of that?
We think there is something that connects, and in many cases, the person sees that as something bright, so looking whitish, therefore silver. And that connection is exactly the same energy that I was talking about that circulates inside of our bodies and flows. And when we leave the body, that energy is what binds us as consciousness and our spirit body to the physical body. And if someone leaves the body, the least risk they have is not returning. Because if someone is out and they do not want to return and they decide it's very nice there and they will just stay there, still they are going to return.
Yeah,
It's unavoidable. I
yeah,
explained that a lot in one of my books that it's available free in my website because there is a lot in terms of our time in our mind frame of what happens when we are outside the body that would interfere with our experience.
right.
The experience, people say, oh, it's subjective. It's not really subjective, but nobody can experience that with you unless there is a joint experience. This happens. Let's say two people are close to each other and they leave the body at the same time and they see each other and they go places together. This can happen.
Hmm.
But is that common? No, that is rare. But there are cases, I have had experiences like that, but that's rare. So, bottom line, Ted, as you said, we must
What's
experience to know it's there, right?
What would you say would be the farthest you've ever traveled in an out of body experience?
Well, if we think in terms of spatial distance, um, like miles, so it would be space in reference to our physical world. I have seen myself outside of the planet
Hmm.
very, very clearly. And I remember looking at the planet from above,
Right.
and I just dive into an area there that I did not know exactly. And then later I went to check in the map where that was, and I saw a city, I saw things there. And like a month later, I was invited to go teach in a place that it was that place.
Wow. Wow.
And so, because of it, and when I arrived there, I saw the houses that I had seen when I was outside the body
Wow.
projected there. When I flew back to the planet, that is, in terms of space, the furthest. But when we talk in terms of dimensional space, which is something different,
Yeah, that's a
because I could be here in the same room, but
right.
go dimensions
Right. Right.
different.
Right.
That is so hard to be certain, but I have been to some places in which I saw. It's really strange when we tell about our experience. Oh, this woman is saying what? It doesn't make sense. But I saw places in which the structures were very light. I mean, the visual aspect of that. And some beings that they would communicate only with thoughts
Hmm.
in a way that is very different from what we have here. Because in
Sure.
many out of body experience, we see people behaving like we behave here. And that confuses us. But
Sure.
was this outside the body? But why were they doing that? But that's why we need to understand how the out of body experience works
Do you ever
so
have
that
any
we can analyze it.
do you ever have any is there any times that you're out of body where you feel frightened? Um, and is it because of some of the entities that you may have come across?
Yes, I have had several of those. I never felt my life was threatened. I never felt I would be in any risk, but very frightened, very strange people. But that was mostly when I didn't know exactly what was going on.
Right.
As a child, I had experiences. My out of body experience were always pleasant
Right.
as a child, fortunately. But I would experience sometimes entities close by, and those entities sometimes they would make me feel afraid. They would get close and, in a way, I do not know if they were mentalizing something or if it was energy only, but I would be terrified. I knew they were there. I couldn't see them, but for me, I didn't need to see. Nobody else was seeing them. And I would know they would come in the middle of the night. So I would go to bed terrified.
Right.
That's why one of my missions in this life is to write a book about experiences in childhood because parents need to know how to help their kids.
Right.
Nobody should go through what I've been through. And I know so many people who had experience of the same type.
Wow.
So that is one thing. But the other is like when you have experiences that, I'm sorry, let me get some apologies.
No, I've kept you a long time because you're so
No, I love
interesting.
it.
So I apologize.
I have no specific time to finish. As long as you want to go, I'm happy. But I have had experiences then. Later in my life, I was probably in my teens or around my 25-year old. I had experiences that were not so pleasant, but basically because I would be outside the body, see someone and not know what was going on. I would be afraid. When someone is afraid, sometimes these entities we may meet, they abuse us. Almost like if you are in the street and you pass by a group of people
Right.
and they say things to you. It's more like a bullying than anything else.
Right.
Nothing that ever really threatened hurting me in any way.
Right.
But In terms of the feeling, that can be very bad. But later in my life, let's say the past 20 years, with more experience, more understanding, especially with stronger energy because of Vilo. I think Vilo made a huge difference to me. But because of that, I have had experience in which I saw things that are not so nice, but I was not a bit scared.
Right,
I could act, I could interpret, I could make sense of them. I could think what was the best way out. But those experiences do not happen to people who are inexperienced in terms
right,
of OBEs.
right,
They interrupt the experience before they get to that
right.
point. So I think it's fair to say that for someone without a lot of experience, things happen in a very natural way.
Yeah,
Being afraid, what if something bad happens to me? That is not logical when we think about the out of body experience. And I will explain why my mind is not logical.
right.
Because when we are in certain stages of the sleep, and that started to be studied there with Charles Start that you mentioned, and there were so many other research done, and I
Yeah,
have had experience that I could verify that. But when we are at certain stage of sleep, we detach from the body because the physical body is so inert that these energies that bind the two bodies, they start getting loose. Most people just get loose and stay gravitating around. But in that moment, you are not conscious, you cannot use your will to do anything, and you are in contact with the non-physical reality.
gotcha. Hmm.
What could be worse than that?
That's right.
So you'd better know. So if you start, detaching a little and you sense the energetic environment,
Right,
let's say in your bedroom, and you feel like, oh, there's something here that shouldn't be here. Oh, I feel a presence that I don't like. Great. It means you are lucid. It means you spot it. You can do something about it. And it's not difficult. It's not complicated at
right,
all. The problem is when some not so positive energy is around and keeps coming back and lingering back and bringing ideas, dreams, nightmares, and feelings during the night, and one does not know that, that contaminates the person
right,
for days.
right.
I know people that they sometimes are talking to me and they say, well, it's been 10 years that every time I wake up during the night or in the morning, I feel a little bit strange, funny, some anguish inside of me. That is not normal.
Yeah,
But people assume it's normal. It's not normal. It is about energy. And Vilo can make one start having more lucid dreams. That is confirmed through data that I have started a lot. And Vilo eventually will make one more capable of maintaining lucidity while falling asleep, therefore more capable of observing the different stages of sleep, including when we start detaching from the body. Vilo will not force somebody outside the body. I must say that because some people say, oh, if I do the technique, then I will have out of body experience. No, Vilo is going to empower you to produce the connection and disconnection that is that are what you want or that is what is needed at that moment. So it's not about forcing you outside the body and taking your control of your energies. On the contrary, it's about empowering you. But it will become easier if someone wants to.
mm,
Vilo in itself is a technique to leave the body,
right.
but it is a technique that goes through adjusting your energy and cleansing your energy. Most people, they want a technique
Yeah,
that they
yeah.
don't have to work so much for
If
that.
anybody's watching that is worried at all about that, I can tell you that from my one little personal experience, it was extremely pleasant. There is nothing I wouldn't give to have another experience where I was able to get all the way out. What Nancy is saying, if you haven't, I mean, to some of you, this may, if you haven't been exposed to this, it may sound a little bit strange. But what I urge you is to go to Nancy's website, go to her page, read her. She's made one of her books free for us. And I promise you, it's worth every second that you will explore. Nanci, what are you working on now? I know you lecture all over the world and you work with people all over the world. What's kind of on your itinerary for 2026?
Oh, I have many events scheduled. I want to stop traveling and stop even more than I have done with the events so that I can concentrate on writing.
Hmm.
I do not want to leave this dimension without writing the book about how we can help children who are sensitive and how we can distinguish if that's a real experience or if it's a psychiatric problem. So I have created several different scales and parameters for that. And so that is the next in my list here.
Awesome. If people want to perhaps work with you, they can go to your website, and I will put that up after we get done here, and they can contact you through your website, and they
Yeah.
can take advantage of any of the programs that you would have available, right?
Yes, absolutely, yes.
Well,
So,
I mean, I have looked forward to this interview for so long because um, it's just, I've really thought about OBEs since I was very, very young. I think I had some experiences back then that kind of come back to me, but weren't really,
yeah,
lodged in my memory.
not so well recalled, right? And
Yeah.
how old were you when you had your experience with the vibration and lifting the body?
I'm sorry, how did I, how was,
How old were you?
I was about I would say I was about late 30s. I would say mid to late 30s.
Mm,
Um, I had done, as I mentioned, a pretty serious study of it about 6 months earlier, read everything I could get a hold of,
mm.
practiced for, off and on, not really the way I should have. When you talk about will, my will was weak, but I had practiced some techniques, but never had experienced vibrations. And then woke up it was early in the morning with vibrations and kind of recognized what was happening. So I had no fear. And I was so happy when I felt myself going out of the body. And I was so disappointed when I realized that I couldn't get all the way out. And then I just started slowly at the same speed going back into the body. And I know that sounds weird to anyone who, again, is newly experiencing these concepts. But I promise you, it's well worth your time to explore this subject. My goodness. Nanci, I hope that you will consider coming on with me again in the future because
Oh, whenever you want. And
I'm
let's
retired. I just
jump into
recently
it.
retired, so I have time now to really do some more of the things that I really want to do. And you're right at the top of the list as far as one of the subject experts that I want to call on. So thank you so, so much for being with me today.
It was such a pleasure to meet you.
Oh,
Thank you. Thank you so much.
thank you.